Welcome everybody to Callus Content. It is Pokemon Perfect ADV 2022 Championship. You guys may have seen the previous video. You should go back and do that if you've not done so already. This is the second match in the round of 8. And it's a doozy here. These players are... This is probably the highlight of the round, in my opinion. One of the two that I think is a real heavyweight matchup. BluesEnergy coming into this having beaten Jonks in the round of 16. And Hclat had probably the best matchup of the first round against Kurtz. That was a real heavyweight duel. But now we've got these guys trying to get into the top 4. And the winner here is going to play against the yet-to-be-determined winner of PK Leech and Jimothy Cool. But this is a huge matchup. Like I said, arguably the highlight pairing of the round. If not that, then the one that I just mentioned. But in any case, there can only be one. Best of 3 for Blues and Hclat. Let's go. These guys definitely know each other. Have played against each other on ladder many times. Both going to lead meta, and Hclat on the top is going to Earthquake and a swing and a miss into Skarm, but he follows up with Magneton. So if you watch my channel with any amount of frequency, you should be familiar with both of these players, but if there's anybody out there who's not, BluesEnergy, largely a ladder hero, has been dipping his feet a little bit more recently into tournament play, side tours, but nevertheless generally quite successful in those side tours. Really good player, a lot of promise. Hclat, I mean, all I should need to say to you is that he won a pretty major, pretty important ADV tournament not all that long ago, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, you're living under a Pokemon rock. So I'll leave that at that. Hclat has opted for a Magdoll, and he has gotten that against a Skarm team, which is probably what he's looking for. But these teams have a lot of similarities. They're both opting for Meta, both opting for Bliss. I assume that they both have a Bulky Water somewhere, but it's possible the Blues team doesn't. We know that Hclat's got this Coon. Gengar did successfully block a Rapid Spin before, so that's something. And there's a Giga Drain, which would have hit the Claydol as well had that tried to come in on a Thunderbolt, but the Coon did end up staying in. Now Blissy's going to come in on Giga Drain, even if Blues has Explosion. I doubt he's going to do it here, because then he loses his Rapid Spin protection. And a lot of switching as Coon comes back in. There's a Brick Break from seemingly a CB meta. Back to Gar. Got to be careful Giga Draining into Coon. You've only got the 8 base PP to begin with, and of course, Coon does have pressure as well, so it's even less. And goes for Explosion now, clearly intended to hit Blissey rather than some other target. And it does a ton, but it doesn't kill. And it's interesting that he's now going to DD up, and Hclat, of course, is just going to stay in Ice Beam, so I don't know that was worth it to DD there. I would have just clicked the attack the first time. But now I guess he's obligated to stay because he let it take so much damage from that Ice Beam. So he's going to go for a +1 HP flying on the way out. That Claydol obviously on the bulkier side to take that as well as it did. And then Psychic is going to get the kill. So domino effect here as Pokemon fall on both sides. And they have another common Mon in Doll here. Doll on Doll is one of those pathetic matchups where neither one can do anything meaningful to the other. You see there a 9% Psychic is the best that they can do, which is terrible. And Clout's not even bothering. He's just Earthquaking over and over again. I mean, it's good for him either way, because if Blue stays in with Doll, then Hclat just sits there and gains lefties and depletes his Psychics. And if he does switch, then, well, both Earthquake and Meta don't want to take an Earthquake, so fine either way. It does leave us, nevertheless, in a 3-4 situation. Hclat on the better end of that, and he's got an Unrevealed in the back, but Meta's faster than Doll here. Like I said, the Doll is bulky. Blues is not able to predict the Meta switch and go for Earthquake, though. He mashes again. I think he's locked on it, like I said. Choice Banded. And there is yet another Explosion taking out a Blissey. 2 Nurse moments in this game, if I were still doing those. 3-2 situation. And there is Psychic connecting on Coon for paltry 15%. Uncommonly, neither player opted to bring Tyranitar, so we are playing a sandless game here, which doesn't happen too often, but here we are. And there's Mence blanking Earthquake, which is poor for Blues. He has no choice but to either fodder it or switch, and the switch is not going to take that HP flying well at all. In fact, I think we're done here. 2 more HP flying should wrap up the game. No chance that Claydol lives even after gaining the lefties here. And that's that. CB Mens is going to wrap this one up pretty handily for Hclat. So it is a 1-0 lead for our Callis Invitational 6 champion. Looking to close out Blues here. He's got 2 opportunities to do it. Can he get to the top 4 and potentially win this tournament as well? Or is he going to have to settle for only winning Callis Invitational 6 and the $1,300 or whatever it was along with it? Or can Blues continue his streak this year of doing really well in side tours, looking like a real baller in tours that are not as big as CI? Let's find out. There's game 2. Don't know why it was laggy loading in, but regardless, here's game 2. And they're going to stay in the same position with Blues on the bottom and Hclat on the top. Both going to stay in. They're both okay with the matchup. Kuhn and Tita respectively. Huge hydro pump, 98% as Clat stays in and DD's up. Rock Slide there with the potential to really cheese them there. High variance move. It could have missed, but it also could have crit or flinched, which would have been devastating for the Kuhn, but neither of those happen, and Ice Beam gets him. So early lead for Blues, who is clearly running a very offensive team, and Clat also seems to be running an offensive team. He's going to pass the Calm Mind to Zapdos, who's outsped an Ice Beam tier, but a crit or a freeze would have been necessary to cheese him out. Doesn't get that, and T-Bolt is going to obviously easily kill the Kuhn there. So back to Pert, also via Baton Pass, so that also is going to keep the boosts. Rock Slide would not have done a lot there. And we're looking at, presumably, an Endeavor Pert. No, he's actually sub-lefties. Very uncommon. Surf there is hefty with +1. Zapdos no chance to survive another. Blues seemingly has no answer to this. I mean, the Swampert to begin with. Never mind the Swampert behind the sub. This seems very difficult for Blues. This game very much looking like Hclat is going to get the 2-0 here and go to our top 4. Hydro Pump at least pops the sub, but what do you do from here? I guess the answer is you Hydro Pump him again and try to crit, but he does not find a crit, and that Swampert's doing just fine. Does Clat play around HP Grass now, despite the special defense boost? Wow, the answer is yes, and he gets bluffed. Blues does not have or does not go for HP Grass, but he's able to trick Hclat into switching, and if Hclat does not win this game, it is going to be that turn that he looks back on and kicks himself a little bit. Had he just stayed in and clicked Surf there, Hclat basically has us in the bag guaranteed. Now, Hclat very well may still win, but now we've got ourselves a 4-4, and it is much closer than it otherwise would have been. Man, Blues really, the bluff there was unreal. Scared Hclat away with a move that he either did not have or had the balls to not use. Hell of a play for Blues, and I don't know that Hclat misplayed, but man, he is going to be kicking himself for that decision. All 3 layers of spikes come down. No Rapid Spinner in sight for Blues after the Starmie went down. And here is the follow-up with Swampert, but Blues somehow in this game has taken the lead, and that trade is only going to keep the lead where it was, which is up a poke. Last poke dug in the back for Blues. Can it pick off Celebi? It's going to do a fuck ton, but it's not going to get him, and Giga Drain will give him at least some health back, up to 32%. So it leaves us in a 2-on-2, still an unrevealed in the back for Clat. Calm Mind. And Thunderbolt, so he clearly doesn't have HP Ice either, so he would have gone for it there. He really probably does have HP Grass and had the courage somehow to not click it in that situation, which was wild. But he's going to get bailed out by an immediate Thunderbolt crit there. And I'm surprised that Hclat didn't just stay in and attack. I guess it was a damage roll whether or not he survives the bolt. It makes sense to pass Tarachi there, and it works out the vast majority of the time. But he gets crit exactly when he needs to. And Blues is going to rob him here in this late game. A little bit of outplay, a little bit of robbery. That one turn was so key where he went to Zapdos and forced out the Swampert there with the threat of HP Grass, whether he actually had it or not. And he never did show anything other than BP and Thunderbolt. The way that this was played, he certainly represented that he had HP Grass. He clearly didn't have Drill Peck or HP Ice because he would have used that against the Celebi. So it certainly looks like and makes sense to me given the team that he actually did have HP Grass, which makes it all the more insane that despite having it there, he doesn't go for it and he just BP's out. That play won him the game. Obviously, Hclat a lot of the time still wins this anyway. What really won him the game was the critical hit here on turn 24. That was pretty rough. Or sorry, turn 23. But I'm still really, really impressed by the play that Blues made to get Hclat to switch there. So that's going to send us to an unexpected Game 3. It really looked like Hclat had this one in the bag and was going to 2-0 Blues, but that is not the way that it played out. So we're going to a third game to decide it. One of these guys, ladder hero BluesEnergy or Callis Invitational 6 champion Hclat, will be eliminated in the round of 8, and it'll be determined by this game. And I'm going to go ahead and switch those sides for continuity with Blues still on the bottom and Hclat on the top. We are painting a picture. Smeargle lead for BluesEnergy, which is almost exclusively on very, very offensive teams. Hclat does scare him away with Salamence in the lead position, and he's got a Cloister as well, so he's going to get a layer up. And after that, he's going to take a nap, and presumably Smeargle is going to get its own spikes down. Here's T-Tar. And he's going to go for sub rather than spikes. Interesting. Gives him a little bit of protection against the tar. He's now going to burn him, so hopefully it's not a physical tar. Looks like it's probably not, given the ice beam there. It still could be mixed, though, so maybe you at least crippled his brick break or rock slide or what have you. Sub ice beam is unusual, so maybe it's sub punch ice beam and some other attack. Interesting stuff. But not a bad position for Blues. He's going to get the Spore off, get the Will-O-Wisp off, and get a layer of spikes. All things considered, pretty solid. Blues does turn the tempo around here as well by eating a Salac Berry. Surf is going to pop the sub, obviously. And Ice Beam ends the day for Pert. But despite being down a poke, I think Blues is actually in a pretty reasonable position. Pretty even game right now. Hell, Blues might even be winning. And Hclat, who swears that Blissey blows and is like the 17th most viable Pokemon or whatever, brings it for a second time in this set. That was a good turn for Hclat, but it does get lummed away. But yeah, the T-Wave there on the T-Tar was pretty big. Oh man, that was big too. Crit and flinch. Can't just be one or the other. Got to get both. Hclat, I think, is actually really far behind now. That was a huge turn. The T-Tar's dead, the Cloister's sleeping, the Blissey is effectively dead. Blues is actually ahead by quite a bit, in my view. Now, granted, he's down on paper. He's down 4-5 on paper, but like the Blissey is effectively dead, and just given the Mons that are left, and just given the health of everything, given the tempo, all things considered, man, wow, he's going to freeze him too. Blues is really, he's playing well. I take nothing away. He's not like some crappy player who's just getting lucky against Hclat. Blues is good to begin with, but it's really hard to beat a player who's both good and lucky, and Blues has gotten luck a couple times when he needed it. The Thunderbolt with Rachi, last game, turn 23, was massive, and then Rock Slide crit flinch there was really good. Freeze was really good. It's going to be tough for Hclat, and there's not a lot of counterplay. I mean, how do you counterplay a freeze on the first ice attack? I mean, what can you do there? He's not ready to concede, obviously. He's going to do everything he can to claw back in the game, but he's going to need to either play perfectly or get some luck of his own or both. Maybe the thaw can just happen, but as it stands, and Blues does lose his T-Tar here on the outplay, he Dragon Dances and gets Earthquaked, but as it stands, Hclat is going to have to really get there. Like I said, despite the scoreboard saying that Blues is behind, remember, Blissey dies to the spike, Cloister is asleep, Gengar is frozen, so the scoreboard is pretty misleading here. I think Blues has a significant advantage despite being down on paper. There's the window to thaw for Clat, and it does not come, and Gengar is going to die. Wow, and Hclat doesn't even play it out, he simply concedes. That might not have even been premature, like I said. So Blissey is at 7%, insta-dies to the spike. The Cloister is not going to fight off Gengar, and it's asleep. This Gengar is outsped and killed by this Gengar. HP Grass, we know it has. It showed it. Would kill the Swampert here, or at least do a massive amount of damage to it. And then, yeah, the Mence is mixed, so it can't even DD up and sweep. And then it would be outsped and super duper killed by the Ice Punch that we also know that this Gengar has. So I don't even think that concession was premature. Like I said, it on paper it looked like Hclat was winning, and it's not super often that a player who's winning on paper, because as you see on the screen, 5-3, it's not super often that the guy who's 5 in a 5-3 hits the concede button. But in this case, it wasn't premature. Blues was going to clean up with this Gar. There were certainly hacks in this series, no doubt about it. Again, the Thunderbolt last game, but this one was even worse, really. I mean, the Rock Slide crit flinch, the insta-freeze on Gar that never thawed. I take nothing away from Blues. I was impressed by the way that he played, and he's had a really good year. But he really got there on the luck when he needed it in this series, and this is, despite Blues being a very good player, for all intents and purposes, this is an upset. It's hard not to think coming into this tournament that Hclat would have been the favorite, having just won CI6. But that's the way it goes, and that's the game that we play. So it's going to be BluesEnergy, like I said, taking on the yet-to-be-determined winner of PK Leach and Jimothy Cool. But there was one other set in this tournament played this evening. I'm going to bring that to you next. And then I also have a little teaser of an upcoming announcement. But you're going to have to wait for the next video for that. In the meantime, thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Appreciate you guys watching, and I will see you in the next video.